Hello everyone, welcome to the Luke Branquinho Show.
Probably the biggest thing I had to overcome was like figuring out how to still train, because figure skating isn't really a sport that you can take time off of and still have the timing. So it was finding a way to train while not being able to walk.
I stretch same time every bull I get on. They said, well, when's that? I said, the first jump.
That was the first time that I'd ever get to spend any time at home since I turned professional. And I liked being home. It caged the animal, if you will.
Well, we're in for a special treat today, everyone. We have Paige Lawrence champion. Paige was, but she could probably still do it, a competitive Olympian skater. She's married to a champion bareback rider, and his name is actually Richmond champion. I have got to spend a lot of time with Paige on the mental side of things because the last few years of my rodeo career, I've been struggling. And Paige, I want to thank you for what you've done for me as far as helping my mental game. And let's talk a little bit about that, on how you're trying to develop that, but where you're at in it with your business right now.
I got into it because, one, I was a bit of a head case as an athlete myself, and so had to learn firsthand how important the mental aspect of like performing at your best is. And when I retired, I knew I wanted to do something with that experience to benefit other people. And so this business venture of mine is really my own creation of being able to work with elite athletes and business owners on the mental aspects of showing up and being your best every single day. And it's been a wild ride, but really fun so far.
That was the biggest problem with me. You know, I was uptight. I was setting expectations instead of setting goals. And you really helped me through that as far as set your goals, because if you set expectations, you're not always going to achieve them, and that's going to make you feel like a failure. And that's what it felt like for me.
I think that one of the things I've learned through working with people that they underestimate is the power of words. And the words that you're using on a daily basis, they're shaping the experiences that you have. And so while often you can't go back and change an experience, you can go back and alter your words, you can learn from what you've been doing. And I think that that was what you and I did the most, was just like tuned into the words you were using and how that was shaping your reality to make some like small pivots. Because obviously you know what you're doing. Obviously you know how to be a top level athlete. There's just some nuances behind the things that we worked on.
The older I got, the injuries started happening. My body didn't quite feel as good. That's when the doubts and the thoughts really started creeping into my head. And do you find that when you're speaking with people that the older they get and their body starts breaking down, there's more thought process that they put into it that necessarily doesn't need to be there?
I think personal stuff can become like business stuff if we don't address it. And so for you, it was the injuries and being later in your career with the family. Your personal insecurities, your personal limitations, they show up in competition. And I think that that's really the important thing, is being able to get to know the person to figure out what it is that's blocking you and finding some ways to work around that.
Well, and growing up in a rodeo family, I know your family has stock up there and is a rodeo contracting family. Obviously, you know, being an Olympic skater, you have that mentality of competition and being able to speak to anybody, but is it a little easier to translate into the rodeo world?
I think that growing up on a ranch and around the rodeo world, it definitely shaped my personality. And I found that even as like a figure skater, I was very much that like hard truth, hardworking, just like don't want to beat around the bush kind of attitude. And I think that that's helped me to relate to the rodeo athletes that I work with. Like my style of communicating is just very blunt, to the point, call you out on your stuff if you need it. And I think that that really meshes well, you know, with the culture of rodeo. So it's kind of, it worked in my favor there, I think.
So Paige, when you're having these conversations with these athletes, whether rodeo, you know, whatever they are, or even business, like you said, what are your, say, main 2 points that you try to bring to them and say, this is what you need to focus on?
So I do think that the work I do is quite unique and individualized, which is the fun part of it. But universally, I would say if I'm going to give 2 suggestions to people, one is to start paying attention to the words that you're saying to yourself all day long. Like, listen into the thoughts that you're having. Because I think that people operate on autopilot for a lot of their lives, and they don't realize all the little ways that they're self-sabotaging or getting in their own ways just with the words that they're using. The second thing I would say is I feel like a lot of people struggle with confidence. And they think that confidence is something that you acquire after you've done some big, awesome, amazing thing. You're like, I did the thing and now I'm confident. And until you get to do that thing, whatever it may be, you struggle with that lack of confidence. And I would say that instead, I like to think of confidence as all the little choices that you make leading up to such a big event. And over time, confidence will be something that helps you to accomplish those big things. It's not gained in a moment, it's found daily in little moments.
So, Paige, I've had my injuries in the arena. Tell us about your injuries that you've had in your sport.
Figure skating, we train a lot. Like we skated 6 hours a day and we're in the gym for 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So a lot of my injuries, I would say, were more like chronic overtraining injuries just from doing too much of the same things. But the season leading up to the Olympics, I actually had like a chronic Achilles injury. I was a bit of a hard-headed athlete and never really took time off for the small injuries. And what ended up happening was I was compensating and my hamstring got weaker, and my partner one day was a little overzealous when he threw me into a throw, and I over-rotated it and pulled my groin and my hamstring and my psoas muscle, or like strained them, I guess you could say. So that was 3 or 4 months out from the Olympics. And I would say probably the biggest thing I had to overcome was like figuring out how to still train, because figure skating isn't really a sport that you can take time off of and still have the timing. So it was finding a way to train while not being able to walk.
That sounds like a rodeo athlete right there. I mean, we get hurt, not injured. Injury, you can't compete really. When you're hurt, you keep pushing through it to try to become your best. And I mean, that just reminded me of a lot of my career. You pull a muscle, guess what? You rub dirt on it, you keep going. In your case, you rub ice shavings.
Yeah. I would say that it taught me some really powerful lessons though. Like, it was a really cool opportunity to challenge me to still find ways to train at 100% every day with only limited opportunities to do the elements. Like, I didn't jump until 3 weeks before our Olympic qualifying event, but finding ways to still show up and to train in a way that I felt confident leaving the rink every single day. Like, I felt like we were making progress every single day, and in a way that was building trust in my own abilities and my own body when I still couldn't perform everything. Spoiler alert, we made the Olympics, so we obviously skated okay. But that was just such a challenging time in my life, to be gearing up for my biggest event and not being able to do 50% of what I was supposed to be doing. It was an interesting challenge that taught me a lot.
I don't know if I should say this, you may get upset, but Richmond pointed it out that your feet, from being in those tight little skate laced, I mean, let's just say you're probably not gonna be a foot model.
No, and they've gotten so much better. I mean, I'm 8 years retired now. I'd say they look beautiful. They're no longer like bunions and like scars and just red tissue everywhere. They were terrifying when I skated.
Social media has become huge in rodeo in our industry, and you see these negative comments or these people that are armchair quarterbacks criticizing. How has that played a role into what you're trying to help people with?
It's a whole new beast that athletes are dealing with, and everyone has an opinion about what you're going out and doing. And so I always say, when you're receiving feedback, criticism, opinions, whatever you want to call it, the first step is to evaluate who it's coming from. Is it from someone that you trust or respect? If it's not, you literally don't move on to step 2 or 3, because it doesn't matter. Their voices don't get to influence your little bubble world that you're operating in. If it is from someone that you trust and respect, go to step 2, which is their comment there to help you? And then the third step, you get to decide what you want to do with that comment. Is it a comment that you want to tuck away, or like, you know what, that's great advice for my future? Or you still have the opportunity to say, I trust this person or respect it, it's meant to help, but you know what, it's not the right time, it's not going to help me right now, I'm going to just get rid of it. Because I think that people lose their power in one of those 3 steps, and they get caught up and distracted. But if you move through those 3 steps, you can pretty much use anything that's said to you in a way that you want to. And I think that that's something that's been really empowering to me with feedback and criticism in my life.
You're giving away a lot of secrets to your business. So how do people reach out to you if they do need some help?
So follow me on Instagram at Paige Lawrence Coaching, or I have a website, www.paigelawrencecoaching.com. It's pretty simple. But yeah, if you have questions, I like to remind people that I'm just like a regular, real human on the other side of this podcast. And I love when people start a conversation and reach out human to human. So happy to say hi.
Well, I know you've helped me a bunch. I know you've helped others. Paige, I appreciate your time. I look forward to having you on the show more than just this one time because I really enjoy our conversations, and I think the fans will love every bit of it too.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited for you, and I'll be subscribing to the podcast myself. So don't say anything bad about me.
I won't talk about your feet again, I promise. My guest, JB Mauney, $7.4 million in career earnings in the PBR. This guy is not afraid of any bull they run under. JB, thanks for joining us. You've had an amazing career, and in a lot of people's minds, the greatest bull rider that ever was. How do you put that into your own words?
I think the real deciding factor where I really wanted to do this for a living, I was 18. Brian Cantor, we traveled together everywhere, and the old saying, it's not broke, don't fix it. So me and Cantor traveled. Well, we won first and second everywhere we went. And he's 6 months younger than I was. So I turned 18 at the first of that year. I was going to wait till he turned 18. We were both going to buy our PBR permits, start going to PBRs. And I think a week before he turned 18, I hung up to a bull at a jackpot and drug up underneath him. He stomped me in the belly, broke all my ribs on my right side, lacerated my liver, bruised my kidneys, my spleen. The hospital, they said I should have never made it out of the arena. And they told me it'd be about 8 months before I get on another bull, and I told them they were crazy as hell. I was broke. I didn't have no money. Had bills coming in, doctor bills. So I had the wonderful pleasure of having a job at a ball bearing plant. Inside all day, covered in grease and oil from head to toe. And after about, 3 or 4 days of working there, my dad asked me, he said, how's that job going? I said, I'm going to tell you one thing, they're going to have hell throwing me off when I go back to riding bulls. I can't do that shit the rest of my life.
I know we've always said, being a professional cowboy, you're too lazy to work and too scared to steal, and that's the only way we know how to make a living.
That's it. And that was kind of the turning point for me to where, because the surgeon told me it should have killed me when that bull stepped on me. She said I shouldn't have got up and made it 5 feet. And I kind of turned the light bulb on. If I was going to do this, I better mean it.
Yeah, put in that effort. And obviously your career has shown the effort you put into it. And going to Calgary and going to these other events where I got to watch you, there's such a huge difference between, your pregame is what I like to call it, compared to the other guys. Those other guys are in the locker room, wherever they're getting the ropes ready, and they're doing push-ups, they're doing stuff. Hell, you and I bullshitted outside Calgary. You're smoking a cigarette, warming your bull rope up. But that's your mentality, and that's what made you who you are and the winner you are. And it's just amazing to see the different warm-ups that guys do. And that's just how you've been and keeps you cool and collected, right?
I've always told myself you never let them see you sweat. And I go about it different than other people, and that's what I try to tell everybody. I said, don't try to figure your own way out. Figure out what works for you, and that's what you stick with. And I said, me being laid back and not acting like I cared, I said, I care more about bull riding than most anything in this world. I said, I just don't show people that I do. And I said, the more I think about something, you think long, you think wrong. So I tried to keep it as simple as possible, and I always tell people, it's 8 seconds. If you do it right every jump, they can't throw you off. So that's the way I went about it. I didn't really look ahead. I didn't really care what the bull did. And I acted like it was another normal day, stand out there, heat my rope up, smoke a cigarette, do whatever.
Bullshit session with whoever's around.
Yeah. And when it was time to crawl off in the bucking chute, once I got in that bucking chute, it was game on.
Well, and I like the conversations. I know we hadn't had very many, but talking to you, it wasn't about bull riding. It was about everything else going on, whether we were cussing somebody for doing some bullshit deal. And that's what I love about you. You don't sugarcoat nothing. If somebody did wrong, you're going to tell it to them, and you're going to let everybody else know too.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty straightforward. What you see is what you get. And there's been a few people that didn't really like that a whole lot because they thought my opinion was didn't really meet their expectations. But you know, all them guys, like, that's what somebody asked me. They said, "You ever had growing troubles before this?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Do you stretch a lot?" I said, "No." I said, "I stretch the same time every bull I get on." They said, "Well, when's that?" I said, "The first jump." I said, "Whatever's tight, them bulls snatch everything loose real quick."
Going back to the bulls and watching you again through your career, you never did back off. You picked the rankest son of a bitch in the pen every time. And that's why I think, and I feel, people consider you the greatest of all time.
That's what they've always said. And I told them I had to, when I hang that bull rope up, I want everybody to have the same outlook. Whether they say I'm the greatest or not, it really doesn't matter to me, but I want them to be able to say I never had any backup. No matter what day it was, how old I was, how young I was, what was on the line, I never had any backup.
Well, and you showed it riding bulls as you did. Guys would be scared to get on them, and whether you got bucked off the first time, second time, third, you would try them. Eventually you conquered them. And tell me about some of those bulls that you did conquer, because I don't have a list of all of them, and I know there's many.
Well, I think I've rode pretty much every world champion bucking bull till I think Smooth Operator. I rode all those. Bushwhacker was probably the one that gets everybody. I attempted to ride him 13 times. I accomplished it once. That's kind of where you know, everybody said, "Well, don't you wish you would have went about it a little different? You probably would have won more." And I said, "No, because I went about it the way I wanted to do it. And as long as I do that, then I can always keep my head up." And I said, I can always live with trying, but I can't live with thinking, what if? You know, his pride kind of got in my way then. They first cracked him out. When he was a young bull, they rode him once, I think. And then when he got kind of to be Bushwhacker, all the hype was around him. They said, "Oh, he can't be rode," you know, all this and everything. And I was like, shit. So I pick him, and first time I get on him, I think about the bottom of the second jump, he whacked me in the side of the head. I flipped around his head, flung me, stomped the shit out of me. I was thinking, all right, he's for real. Anytime I had the chance to pick him, I picked him. Whether I was sitting first, 10th, it didn't matter. That's what I'd always tell them guys. They'd say, "What are you picking, JB?" I said, "It doesn't matter." I said, "They're going to leave me what I want, no matter where I'm at." And because nobody wanted to get on him. You know, if guys were sitting first, they were going to try to pick a bull they knew they could ride to win the event. I was the opposite side of the coin. Nobody remembers 85-point bull ride, so who wants to be 85? Let's be 95. And by far the smartest bucking bull I've ever been around. Not a mean bone in his body. Stood wherever you wanted him to in the bucking chute, could move him around. And out of 13 times, he never cut the same tracks twice. You had no idea what he was going to do when you nodded, and that means he's using his brain. Bruiser, great bucking bull, but you knew what he was going to do. Same thing every time. Round the left, jump way up in the air, backwards, back to the right. All you just had to do was make sure you were in the right spot. But Bushwhacker, there was no game plan. It was a dog fight from the word go.
Speaking of using your brain and me not using mine, Julio Moreno came to me when Bushwhacker was a calf. He said, "Hey, Luke, give me $5,000. I'll get you in on this really good bull. I'm going to call him Bushwhacker." And I'm like, ugh, broke rodeo cowboy trying to make a living. I'm like, I don't know if I have it right now, Julio. I really wish I would have had it at that time or figured out how to get it to be partners in that sucker, because that was an opportunity that slipped through my fingers.
I've had a few of those run through my fingers myself. Jerome Davis and Brian Canner bought a little bull they called Super Freak. And I was sitting there with them the night they were buying him, bidding on him. And Jerome said, "You want to split him 3 ways?" I said, "Heck no." I said, "He can't keep his feet. You know, he's just a yearling. They were bucking him with a dummy, but he fell down in every video." I said, "He can't keep his feet." They buy him, bring him back, get him to North Carolina. And every time they bucked him at the ranch over there, he fell down. Well, Brian calls me one day. He said, "Hey, did you hear about my calf?" I said, "No." He said, "He won American Heritage, won $97,000. I was like, "You've got to be shitting me." Now I try not to keep them around long enough to see if they're going to fall down or not. I flip them pretty quick when I get them.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. It's been completely awesome. I know everybody that's watching is going to enjoy it, like to get your insight, and looking forward to seeing what's in the future for you.
I appreciate it.
You bet, man. Thanks again, and good luck to you.
Yes, sir. Have a good one.
I'm excited for my next guest. He is arguably one of the very best bull riders, if not the very best bull rider in the history of bull riding. 7-time world champion. This is amazing. Only 8 times in the national final, so he has dominated about every year. Over $3 million in career earnings. Sage Kimzey. Sage, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Luke.
How about having such a great year started and then bam, injury hits? That's got to be, obviously a heartbreaker for you.
Yes and no. It probably would have been more of a heartbreaker other than the fact that we welcomed our son at the end of January, so he's been keeping us busy.
Obviously, you've experienced injury in the past and overcame it. What was the exact injury date and surgery date?
I got slammed bad at the American this year, and it kind of like busted some stuff loose and had some x-rays done at Houston, and it saw that I had like a broken collarbone and stuff, and I was like, okay, well, that's why it hurts. And rolled on, had it eval'd at a couple places. They were like, well, your shoulder's very unstable, and at some point you're going to need to get this fixed. I guess it was at Weatherford on the 10th of June. It came out again, and they operated on it the end of July.
I got you. That Weatherford's hard on a guy. That's where my hamstring gave loose last year. And I've been asked and by multiple people, because they obviously know we have some sort of a connection, is Sage going to be ready to ride at the finals? Is there any chance of that?
No, there's not. I'm actually not going to qualify for the finals because they'll take away like $30,000 for not hitting my 40 rodeos for the Extreme Bowl.
Right.
Even then, like the recovery on this is 6 to 8 months, and that puts me mid-January at least. And I'm definitely not going to push it. So
you have zero to prove in the Western sports of industry and zero to prove in bull riding. I mean, 7 world championships, 8 qualifications to the national finals. You're batting a pretty good average right there and getting healthy and getting back to the finals next year and going after that 8th.
I've had a pretty good run for sure, but the saga is not over yet. I know that.
When I first started steer wrestling, I was scared to death of hitting the ground. My brain said the stronger head catch I get, the more aggressive to that steer's head I get, the less chance it's going to hurt me. What about you? How do you psych yourself up to get on large animal that's trying to spin out from underneath you, buck out from underneath you?
Yeah, I don't really think about it anymore. Like definitely growing up as a kid, it was a battle because I didn't really mature as quickly as most kids. So every time I'd move up an age group, I would be like way overmatched and really like no business getting on the animals that I was. Man, I almost quit several times. I guess it's just dumb enough and tough enough to keep with it.
I always told myself, if I wasn't a little nervous backing in the box, whether excitement or whatever it was, I knew it was time to retire. And that point came where I backed in the box and I'm like, what am I doing here? And that's a tough pill to swallow, trust me.
2020 was one of those years for a lot of reasons. Got flipped on at San Antonio, had ankle surgery. Back 2 weeks after for the American in Houston. Split the win at the American, didn't do any good at Houston. And then boom, COVID shut everything down. And like that was the first time that I'd ever get to spend any time at home since I turned professional. And I liked being home. It caged the animal, if you will, for a while for me. And it took me a while to tap back in that inner dog that it takes to get on a 1,700-pound bull that doesn't want you on his back.
You're helping out with the PBR teams with Kate Harrison and Matt West. And I've heard nothing but great reviews and everything that you're bringing to the table for them. How has that been, that transition?
It's been fun. It's been definitely different. The biggest thing that for me, I didn't want to be tough on the guys because bull riding is one of the toughest sports in the entire world. So for me, that was kind of my whole thing going into it is I was like, man, if I could express how hard this sport is, then, I'll be doing my job well. And it's been fun though.
What's your take on the PBR teams?
I think the upside potential for PBR teams is absolutely huge. It's one thing that rodeo's never really been able to harness is the home fan. And that's the thing is there's so many people that love rodeo but don't follow it on a day-to-day. Something like the PBR teams comes in and, if you live around Nashville, you can root for the Nashville Stampede. Even if you don't know a single rider on their roster or anything else. It brings that home team element to rodeo.
I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Looking forward to 2023, you being healed up, going after that next gold buckle. And Shane Hanchy said it best, one's never enough, and you never have enough. And I think that's just the cowboy mentality. Obviously, you're going after number 8, arguably one of the very best bull riders in the world, if not the best, Sage. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Luke.
You bet, man. Good luck to you. Tell us about your injuries in what do you call it? Ice rink? A skating rink? I mean, forgive me because
You're so cute.